Blog Talk Radio.
Aloha, everybody. This is Jennifer O'Neill, and joining me is my co-host, Debbie. Hello, Debbie.
Hello, everyone.
So today we are going to talk about empaths, or being an empath, and the different signs of how you can tell if you're an empath. We've had this come up quite a bit. Like how I just get right into the show. I wasted no time whatsoever. I'm like, I just slid right in. But
yes.
There's a lot to talk about when it comes to empath or being an empath and that sort of thing. So this seems to be a reoccurring theme. And so I want to explain to people what's happening. First I better tell you what an empath is if you don't know what it is. An empath is one of your psychic senses. It's one that is normally called, or what used to be called, clairsentience. It's no longer really called clairsentience. It's actually more commonly referred to as an empath. And what that refers to is an extrasensory perception where a person acquires psychic knowledge primarily by means of empathic feelings and emotions. So in other words, you can feel what is going on with another person emotionally. You can feel it. Like if somebody is standing in front of you and they're trying to say that they're, or they're trying to put on a happy face or something like that, you can feel through their cover is what I call it, because they're putting a cover or a show on for whoever or trying to be happy, but you can feel that that's not the case. Now, we're going to go through and talk about a lot of the different things. We're going to first talk about the signs of how you can tell if you're an empath. But one of the things that people really need to understand is this is absolutely one of the most confusing of the psychic senses, hands down. There is no question about it. It's one of the most confusing, toughest ones to have. It doesn't mean that you cannot live a normal life and do all of those things, and that now you're going to be caused a whole bunch of problems because you're an empath. That absolutely isn't what it means. It means a lot of the other psychic senses have more of a cut and dry type of meaning to them, or there's more clear boundaries with them. And when you're an empath, because of the empathic feelings and emotions that are involved, there's no boundaries in a sense. All the boundaries seem to be crossing. Wires seem to be crossing everywhere. So it can absolutely be one of the most confusing psychic senses. Now, before we get into that, I would also like to let everybody know if you have any sensitivity at all, if you tend to be developing any of your psychic senses or feel like you were sensitive as a child, or sensitive, here and there, but maybe even not consistently, it doesn't matter. One of the things that people should start being aware of, if you know this, is solar flares. Did you know this, Debbie? Did me and you talk about this?
Very briefly yesterday. You were explaining it to me just a little bit yesterday.
Okay. Well, what's happening with this new consciousness era is everybody is becoming more aware of their spiritual body. And as you become more aware of your spiritual body, you tend to be more tuned in and tapped into your psychic senses. So whether you're aware that you're tuned in or not, it doesn't really matter. You just are. So as that begins to heighten with everybody, some other things are happening with the Earth and the astrological changes. There's some things going on, with the weather and with different, the sun and the solar flares, and all these different patterns are starting to evolve and change. And it's not a destruction thing. It's not like the world's coming to an end and everything's going to blow up and, go hide in a cave somewhere. But it's just, there's changes. There's just different things that are happening, different weather patterns, etc. And with the two, what's happening is solar flares are becoming a little bit more intense, and they have been around for many, many years. I think even in the 70s and, whatever, but people need to understand that they didn't really have all the instruments to see the solar flares before or to monitor them as much, so it was kind of like they didn't talk about them as much. However, they have been enhanced. There are more solar flares going on at this point in time. And the reason that I'm even bringing this up is because a lot of people for the past 2, 3, 4 days. Actually, it started 4 days ago, I believe, and ended yesterday. People started, anybody who has their heightened psychic senses, they're aware of their spiritual body, they were experiencing really high emotional states. They were experiencing a lot of anxiety. Everybody was really edgy. So internally, you're experiencing what feels like some disrupt. It feels like you're upset. It feels like you're emotional when you shouldn't be so emotional. So your emotions are like times 10. It's all these different things going on inside that's feeling kind of unsettling and almost feeling like you're sort of going to blow up or cry or whatever. And they very much were beginning to notice. Actually, me and my dad started really paying attention to this. My dad is who actually brought it to my attention, is the solar flares, when they come and hit the Earth's magnetic field, there's a push, and so people's behaviors and people's emotions are starting to coincide with when these solar flares are hitting. And so when they become real intense like they just were 3-4 days ago, people are starting to feel that way. They're feeling really out of balance, and then the next thing, and that when they end, all of a sudden you feel really good, or you don't feel necessarily really good, but you feel a lot better. You feel more like you can deal. You don't feel as emotional. You don't feel as like anxious. You feel a lot more calm, like you can handle things differently, and it all is an internal feeling, kind of in your chest and your body. So that is something that anybody who is experiencing any type of psychic senses or heightened psychic ability should really pay more attention to. I notice that they affect me really a lot. They affect me so much that I've instructed my dad to call me and warn ahead of time so that I may tell everybody around me, including my husband and my children, that they should really just be very aware that I could be slightly delicate during that time. So it's really funny, but anyways.
So the solar flares, then you're saying it enhances or it magnifies your emotions?
Yes, it enhances and magnifies emotions, but it really heightens any, like if you're feeling emotional about something, or if you're feeling anxious about something, or a little unsettled about something, it magnifies it. But it's like, for the women out there, you're going to love this. It's like PMS times 100.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, like I'm not kidding. Like PMS, your husband's going to be wishing for PMS at this point. So it's like it just heightens it really a lot. But the interesting thing is it's happening to men too. I noticed that it's happening to men a lot. And it's funny because my daughter works at a bank, and one of the things that tellers always talk about is when there's a full moon. They actually can predict when there's a full moon because they get all these really interesting characters that tend to come in behaving kind of out of character during the full moon. And so one of the tellers, she was joking around, we'll look at another teller and just be like, oh, it must be full moon. Watch out for the moon. Look out for the solar flares. Like this, it just is having this type of effect on people. The only and I'm not telling people this to scare them, because it's not a scary thing. Like it's just something that should be aware of, and it's easier to deal with. The reason I'm mentioning it is because I was really happy when I started figuring out this pattern, because it started making me feel not so emotionally up and down. It made me feel like I actually, it was a reaction to something, and that more felt like, that's what it felt like to me, is that I was more reacting in a way that I would be affected by, something, whether it be the full moon or PMS or solar flares. But for me, it helps me put a cork on the emotions into a more manageable level when I understand that, my body or my spiritual body is reacting on some manner, Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so how often do the solar flares
they don't. The last time that it was pretty intense, and it's not all solar flares, it's the really intense ones. I believe the last ones before this were about 3 months ago, somewhere around there. So, it's something we'll probably notice about 4 times a year, maybe 6. And they tend to last 2, 3, 4 days at a time. So they're just something.
So this isn't going to be a once a month thing.
Oh, thank God, right? I mean, really, seriously. So no, not a once a month thing, but it is something to understand as you're learning about your psychic senses that these things are really affecting people right now. They really, really are. And many people that I've told, and many of my friends or clients, when they're going through that, a lot of them, and I'm sure if you're listening and that you were affected, a lot of you will just be like, oh, yes, that makes sense, because it's one of those things where you, at the time when you're feeling real emotional, you're thinking, I'm overreacting about this, or this is not my normal behavior. I'm not so normally over the top with my response. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
A lot of people,
so if someone were very, very happy to begin with, and then would that intensify that emotion?
Yes, absolutely. Because it's affecting just emotions. It's affecting all of things. So let's get into the 6 signs that you are an empath, so that we can talk about that a little bit, because the first one is going to be fun, because I think we'll be able to talk about what happened with your event in a positive manner. The first sign is, do you feel overwhelmed when going into a place filled with a lot of people? And now, when I'm talking about this specific one, but we're going to go to the positive aspect, which is something that you just experienced. This is something that a lot of people notice when they may be feeling overwhelmed when they go into a mall, into a sporting event, or Walmart. Walmart seems to be a big one. Like, everybody will identify with that, right? And somewhere where there's a lot of people, you want to, the thing is, a lot of times you'll want to go in, but when you get there, you start to feel like anxious, unsettled, very off, but you're not really sure why. Now, this doesn't have to be a public place either. It can be like Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, a birthday party, a party at a house, anywhere where you tend to be around a lot of people. So the reason that I bring this up too, and I also want to explain why does this happen. And in fact, because you get this overwhelmed feeling when you go into a place filled with a lot of people, if you're an empath, a lot of empaths actually experience anxiety disorders. And why does all this happen? This happens because as an empath, you pick up psychically, you feel in your body, in your chest, all these different emotions. So you can pick up on what people are feeling at the time. So if you think about it and you go into Walmart, and let's say there's 50 or 100, we'll just say it's a slow day at Walmart, there's 50 or 100 people like right in your vicinity, right? You will be picking up on a flood of emotions all at one time. So you become something like a radio where you're tuned in to like a whole bunch of stations at one time. And the thing is your spiritual and your physical bodies become really overwhelmed because it's trying to make sense of it all. Because as an empath, what happens is your body responds first. Your body responds before that you have a thought that coincides with it. And so when your body responds first, your mind starts to go, wait a minute, why is my body responding anxiously? Why is it responding like it's sad? Why is this behavior happening in my body? Why am I having this reaction? So it tries to figure it out, and it tries to go through all the things to where it would put 2 and 2 together so they'd be on the same page. That's what's really confusing about being an empath, is your body and your mind do not feel on the same page. Normally, when you have an emotion or a thought or your own reaction, when you're not being empathetic to somebody and you're not being an empath because there's someone in front of you, what happens is you have a thought usually, and when that thought comes a perception, and with that thought and perception, it automatically has a response that will come along in your body. So your thought is prior to your body having an emotion or an emotional reaction. So prior to the emotional reaction, you have a thought. Now that's when they're your own, because what triggers you to have an emotional reaction in your body is only by your perception. It's by your perception and your thought. So when you go into a place and you begin to immediately have an emotional reaction of feeling anxious or upset or stressed, because a lot of people in Walmart are stressed. Isn't that so weird? But like it really is. When you have that emotional reaction right away, but it didn't precede a thought, so it wasn't something that was on the same page with your mind, you start to panic. You start getting anxiety. Your mind really starts racing to try to figure out what's wrong. It feels like there's something wrong. It feels like that, things, there's a problem. Then it goes into fight or flight mode, because it just feels like that's what your mind interprets it as. If it cannot realize that it preceded a thought, it goes into fight or flight mode. And so that's why a lot of people end up having anxiety. So what happens, that's why that is one of the signs, feeling overwhelmed when you go into a place filled with a lot of people. The reason is because you get hit with a flood of emotions all at one time, and your mind and body are not on the same page, and you're really reading all of the people around you. Now, you had asked me a question the other day, which will sort of coincide with this, which I really love. On the positive side of that, you can also go into an event or a place filled with a lot of people, maybe a church, maybe like maybe you enjoy going to church, maybe go into a book group with a lot of girlfriends, or you do something what you did, which is the TED event.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go, when you go into a place filled with a lot of positive energy and people that are just super excited, and they're just really feeding off each other and raising each other's vibration, and they're all there just feeling really good. When that happens, you also will experience that in a heightened sensitivity. So you can also have a very good, amazing, powerful, wonderful experience as well. But it just depends on the type of people that you are around at the moment. So your body will, in your vibrational body, will mimic the type of people you are around at that particular time. So usually when people go to a sporting event, Walmart, the mall, that stuff like that, people are stressing, they're in a hurry, they're trying to get in and out, they're stressed because of money, et cetera, et cetera. If you go into like a church event, which some people just love going to their church functions, or if you go into like a TED event, or even maybe a talk, an inspirational talk, then it feels amazing. You can feel it in the room. The energy's good. Everybody's raising each other's vibration. So you can feel it in that way as well. So that can be a positive and a negative of that. We have a lot of callers on the line, and we are going to get to you, but I want to try to get through a couple of these signs first. Now, the second sign of being an empath is, can you always tell when someone's lying to you? So this is something that a lot of you will be like, oh yeah, or no, I don't know. The signs of being an empath, after we get through them, you won't necessarily have all of the signs, but you have to have all of them to make you an empath. You may only have 2 or 3 of the signs, and you may very well be an empath. But as we go through them, you'll know immediately. You'll be like, oh, that makes total sense. So have you always been able to tell when someone's lying to you or telling you the truth? So even if they do it flawlessly, it's something that like or you feel, or you can feel if someone's being deceptive. Even when you have like no reason not to believe them, you just know to the core you just know. You just feel like, oh, they are so not telling the truth. I have no idea why. That can be a little confusing as an empath, especially if you don't know you're an empath, because then you're like, well, why would I even question this person? I feel weird that I'm even questioning their behavior, or they have no reason to lie to me, type of thing. So can you always tell when someone's lying to you? Number 3, do you have random emotions or mood swings, especially when someone's in your presence or when you think about them that makes no sense to you? This is something similar to what we were talking about in number 1. All of your emotional response, if it is your own, will follow a thought that coincides with that particular emotion. So when they're your own emotions, when you're in someone's presence, if they're your own emotions, you will always have a thought that precedes the emotion. That's what happens because that is your body's trigger. Your thought and your perception will trigger your emotional response. They cannot be any other way. But when you are around a group of people or a person, if you are ever in someone's presence or around more than one person and you keep having like random mood swings that are not making any sense to you, for instance, maybe you had a really great day, and then you're around somebody, but you're feeling upset, but you don't know why, and you're trying to remember, did I forget I had a bad part of my day? Did I get yelled at? Did I miss a deadline? Did I do, when you start going back and you cannot figure out anything, most likely it is because somebody else in your vicinity is feeling that way. And then you'll really notice because a lot of times then when they leave, like if you're no longer in their presence, it will go away very quickly, or sometimes it'll hang out for a little while, but for the most part it leaves when they leave for the most part. Can you feel somebody's physical ailments? This is really funny because my daughter just had this happen to her. Well, I guess it's not really funny because you don't want to feel anybody's physical ailments. However, do you ever feel sick, experience a pain, which make no sense to you at all, only later to find out that like a friend or a family member was sick or having an issue of some sort? My daughter, it was probably, now she's older, she's in her early 20s, she's had all of her permanent teeth sealed. She's had cavities when she was younger. However, as an adult, she's never had any cavities. And it was probably 3-4 weeks ago, she started saying, Mom, my teeth are really bothering me. Or this one tooth. And we would look at it, could not see any discoloration, anything that would indicate a cavity. Nothing around the tooth. I knew she had her teeth sealed, and so I was like, well, watch it, because sometimes sinus things can do that, etc. And it was consistent. It hung around and hung around and hung around and kept doing it for weeks. And after a couple of weeks, and she thought it was getting worse, she finally decided, well, maybe I better go check it out because maybe it's something we cannot see. The day that she had decided to do that, my husband went into the dentist for a tooth pain that he had been having for 2 weeks. Not making correlation that after he got home from that night on, her tooth pain was gone and she hasn't had it since. So that would be something similar to feeling someone's physical ailments, and don't wish that you get that. Number 5, do you instinctively know what someone needs to feel better emotionally or physically? Now, this is why a lot of healers or a lot of empaths become healers, psychics, people that heal other people and help other people. They don't just become healers and psychics, though, or Reiki people or energy workers. They also become doctors. They become psychiatrists. They become the hairdresser who listens to all your problems. They become all of different professions. But if you instinctively know what someone needs to feel better emotionally or physically, that's a very good indicator that you're an empath. And you'll know this because a lot of your friends or family members, or it's usually friends, they'll consistently come to you for advice. And they'll always say, oh, I felt so much better after talking to you. Thank you for lending an ear. You tend to be the go-to person in your group or something, or the go-to person in your family to help people feel better when they're having an issue. Mm-hmm. Lastly, number 6, do you feel emotionally or physically drained after being around an individual or a group of individuals? Now, this is one of the biggest signs that you're an empath. A lot of people are really discovering that they are empaths with this new consciousness era, and as they're becoming aware of their spiritual bodies, they're really discovering what's happening with this empathic feeling or this empathic sense that they have. And so some of the things that you experience when you feel emotionally drained after being around an individual or a group of people to the point of not feeling physically not well are being shaky, lightheaded, weak, nauseous, anxious, out of body, like a low blood sugar type of feeling, even when you're full. And so I get this often because, well, I'm a very strong empath. That is one of my strongest gifts. It's been something I've had my whole entire life. And when I do, there's ways to protect yourself psychically with all of these different things that we're talking about, which I think that we're going to get to in the next show. This show is really about how to determine if you're an empath and why you're feeling those ways. I can do all the psychic protection, but when I am around, when I'm doing readings, like for 10 hours in an event, or when I'm, really seeing a lot of clients, what happens is, as an empath, you're really subjected to what is called energy vampires, and so you're susceptible to a drainage of energy, people drawing energy from your system. Now, people may be very well-meaning, they may be not. It doesn't really matter. They can be good people, not so good people. That doesn't really determine an energy vampire. But as an empath, you're very susceptible to those people. So when you're around an individual or a group of people who tends to draw upon your energy and completely depleting it, it leaves you feeling your spiritual body, when you're depleted of energy, is left feeling shaky, lightheaded, weak, nauseous, all of those different things. And so it's some people, you'll notice there may be one individual that does it to you over and over again, that you may just find it randomly if you're dealing with people that you don't know. But this is another sign of being an empath. And so, again, there's some things that you can do to counteract that. There's some things that you can do after that you've been around groups of people. And with the next show, we're going to get into that a little bit more. But let's take some callers that we have on the line here. We have a caller that is just taking a minute to get on the line. Area code 347. Aloha.
Hi, 347. I'm on a speakerphone. I hope you can hear me without disturbance.
Yes, we can hear you. What questions do you have for us?
Oh, really no questions. I hit all 6. Now, the second one about if you could tell someone is lying or not, I would say I have maybe a 85, 90% accuracy, because sometimes I doubt myself and I want to give that person the benefit of the doubt. But, most of the time it's just so crystal clear. It's like you're laughing at them inside. Like, why are you even trying? I tell my son sometimes, I'm like, why do you even try to lie? I mean, it's even necessary.
It is funny how that happens, and I like that you mentioned your experience with that, because that is usually a good accuracy rate. It's not that you're going to be able to tell they're lying all the time, but you're going to be able to tell they're lying like most of the time, like an 80 percentile. That was a very good point that you just made there. And that is hilarious when they do that. But if you're dealing with people who are not empaths,
yeah, they're getting away.
No idea what you're experiencing. And the thing is they don't realize when you lie, ever, like if you yourself or I was lying or Debbie was lying, any of us, when we lie, we get that anxious feeling or that deceptive feeling of getting caught, that feeling in your chest that you're doing something that's not quite right and deceitful, And so for anybody who's listening out there, the caller, you can feel that feeling from that person. And that is funny. Right. Yeah, when people lie, that's one of the easiest ways to tell you're an empath, is if you know when people are lying, because it's very clear feeling. That is not one that you'll
that sensation in your chest, like not that warm good, but that little burning in your chest, like or the fight and flight.
Yep, that lying feeling, that deceptive feeling is not something you will get from anything else. And the other way that it's good, that you can tell if you're an empath at that point too, is because obviously you would know if you're doing something to lie at that point yourself. So when you're getting that feeling and it's not coming from you, your mind immediately scans the room to who you're talking to or what's happening, And so, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, well, that exactly. One other thing, when I go into a supermarket or something on a busy day, which I try to avoid, but when I do, does your mind start spacing out a bit? All of a sudden, it just feels like you went somewhere.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing that I have happen, or the empaths have happen, that I absolutely hate, gosh, I hate this worse than anything, is I begin to feel out of body. I begin to feel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like you're not in your body. You just spaced out. You kind of walk. I'm walking automatically and trying to get my brain to do what I want to get through the supermarket. And then when I'm in the line, I'm usually a patient person, but I snapped at this lady yesterday. She was, the day before, she was going so slow. And usually I'm patient. I'll read a magazine while I'm waiting. And I snapped at her. I said, well, I couldn't believe I was doing that.
Right. Well, and that happens, and that's also a very good point, is you begin to feel like you're so disconnected from your physical body that it feels I get the feeling that I'm watching a movie. I'm almost like watching myself. And like you said, it's like you have to think really hard to make sure your body's still walking, you're still doing the things you're telling it to, but you really don't feel like you're there. And so I hate that. It's not a fun feeling. But we are going to go through some things to counteract that on the next show too. I'm really glad that you called in. Have you noticed that have you learned to manage being an empath at all? I mean, have you known you were an empath for a long time?
The funny thing about it is that I've always known I was a sensitive type of person, but what happened is 5 years ago, after I had my first Reiki initiation, 3 days later, without doing any practice on anyone, just 3 days later, I started noticing things more, became more aware of it, and that's where it went on, and it just got stronger. And even though I'm a Reiki practitioner, I really don't work and practice on people. It just like kind of opened up. No, actually, it didn't open up. It got stronger because I had felt these feelings, but they weren't so often. And then I moved also to New York 10 years ago, and then I did notice, even before I heard of Reiki, that I was getting a little bit more sensitive. So I don't know which one actually came first. But I was living in the Southwest, and the energy there was more cleaner. When I came here to New York, I felt drained.
And that it doesn't. That's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. But it comes around at different times. But it sounds to me also though, like when you accepted the Reiki thing, you also validated that you had an energy gift. And once people just get confidence in themselves that they have any type of gift, it tends to heighten that and gives them permission to just excel at that gift, So then all the barriers come down at that point, and all the senses tend to heighten. So thank you for calling in and sharing your story. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you so much. I'll listen to the rest of the show on my PC. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Aloha.
Aloha.
Take care.
We're going to have you talk about some of your experiences, too. We'll have to take this next call here. Aloha with area code 913.
Aloha.
Hi.
Hi.
What's going on?
Well, I've known that for years that I was an empath and have gotten pretty good at handling it. And in the last 3 weeks, I have noticed that my sensitivity has just gotten off the charts to the point where I'm almost housebound again because I'm picking up things people don't even know they're experiencing. And I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed and not quite sure how to handle it. And I didn't know what you might have to throw in the mix that would explain that or give me some guidelines on how to deal with it.
I called in. I'm going to do a ton of stuff on next week's show, but I just wrote 2 books on this, and it's so much information that I obviously can't fit it into this show. So if you haven't already, just because I really do want to help you with this, because when you do get that overwhelmed that you're sort of, I know what you're saying, where you're sort of like housebound in a sense, it really is kind of sad when you're in that place because you don't want to be in that place, You want to be able to go out and enjoy different things, right? And so you want to have it be able to be manageable, and it is manageable. I do have a lot of information on that. So make sure that you go to either HawaiiHealings.com or InspirationalExaminer.com and make sure you put your name in my email list, that VIP email list, because when my 2 books come out in the next couple of weeks, there's so much information in there that's going to help you. And they're not, the digital ones are going to be like $3.99, the other one's like $2.99. So if they're really inexpensive, and those are going to help you so much, it's going to be crazy. So A lot. What happens when you get to that point of being an empath is your energy is not as strong as it should be. And so you have to do several different things, which again are going to be a lot in that book. But do you do any kind of grounding at all?
Yeah, I do grounding and chakra clearing every morning.
Protection.
I'm sorry?
Do you do any protection, any bubble? Do you bubble yourself?
Yeah, I've tried several different things, and actually, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm at this point not even sure what the best thing to do is.
Yeah, what happens is you need to make your everyday life a sort of a routine. So what I tend to do when it's gotten really bad for me is you want to do things where you want to make sure that you have a very balanced diet, okay? That's number one, because you want to make sure that your physical body doesn't react at all with the low blood sugar, any of that stuff. So that's number one. Number two, people do not realize when they're an empath that exercise is huge, huge. They think that I'm just trying to make them healthy or something, but it's actually not necessary. It's not just for your health reasons. Exercise does three different things, which I will talk to you about. Do you do any type of exercise?
Not regularly, no.
Okay. That is so bad for an empath. I can't even stress it enough to you. And what happens is when you do physical exercise, and I hate running, but I make myself, like me and my daughter, we run every other day, like a mile or something. And it's just, I do these things to manage some of this stuff as well. But what happens when you exercise is you actually merge, you balance your spiritual and your physical body. And when you become to the point where you're at, what's happening is you're out of balance, and your spiritual self, your spiritual body is, you're way more tuned into your spiritual body than you are to your physical body. And that causes a huge problem because it causes you to get so anxious and so overwhelmed and so in tune to everybody's stuff that you have trouble. It's like it takes over and you have trouble managing it. It's kind of like if you were to have an uncontrollable child or something. It really becomes hard to manage. So you have to be able to keep that spiritual body balanced with the physical energy in order to be able to assert your control over what you're feeling empathic-wise. And so when you exercise, it pulls those two back in balance, because when you're running or, I don't know, playing tennis, or because you don't have to just run. You could play tennis, you could run on a machine, you could bike, you can do any of those things. When you do that, it forces your physical body to then balance out the spiritual. It also forces a grounding technique that's more intense than just doing a grounding meditation, okay? So it intensifies the grounding at the same time. The other thing it does is it releases more intensely. It's like people don't realize, because they'll do the grounding, they'll do the releasing of all the excess energy, they'll do all these things. But when you physically exercise, it's doing these things. It's like grounding on P90X. It's like ground. And so when you do the exercise, you don't just balance the body, you ground the system, you release the excess energy that you're picking up from everybody else, times like way more than you would in a grounding meditation. You also physically pick up a lot of the earth's energy just by the act of the physical exercise itself. It causes friction with the earth's energy. When it causes friction with the earth's energy, it causes you to pick it up like a magnet, or like if you're running a magnet over like some nails or something, it causes you to just pick it up really strong. So that's also different. So it does where it releases energy. It refills the Mother Earth energy, which is where you're off balance. And it does it intensely, and then it balances the two bodies way quicker. It does a lot of things. So that is probably one of the things that you're lacking that's going to help you the most is the exercise. And it tends to allow you a lot more control over shutting out your empathic skills, or shutting out your, other people. It tends to strengthen your energy system to a really high degree. I kid you not, I hate exercise, but I have to do it. If I don't, I can be very susceptible to being way more anxious than normal, or way more susceptible to other people's stuff. The other thing is, you also want to make sure that you're doing the like, if you ever go out and you're picking up excess energy, the other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you shower, or you if you're picking up on your hands. I always just shower if I come back, because that water clears any excess energy that are around you. And then do the scented soaps and all of that. Do you do all that stuff too?
I'm not familiar with the scented soaps, but I do a lot of like Epsom salt or sea salt baths.
You want to you also want to do like scented. If you're showering, you want to do scented what do you call those, body washes? Not flowery scented ones. The grounding ones tend to be musky, or like have wood smells, like sandalwood or musky. They almost smell like a lot of men's cologne a lot of times. In fact, for my shower stuff, I actually use my husband's shower gel, because it has that musky grounding smell to it. I really feel like you're missing, your huge problem with your empath stuff is you're really missing the exercise part. And like I said, that's a grounding technique on P90X. I'm not even kidding. That it really is going to balance both your bodies. So to sum this up, when you get as bad as you are right now, or to where you're really feeling that you're having a hard time being around people, that means that your spiritual body is way out of balance with your physical. You're way too in tune to your spiritual body. It's like a 90-10. And you need to bring that balance back down to a 50-50, or at least a 60-40. And the only way that you can do that, if you're doing all of those other things, and all those other things are kind of like nice little grounding techniques, but the exercise is a serious grounding technique. So, and it's also a balancing technique. It's not just grounding, it's balancing. It does a whole bunch of stuff that I can't explain to you on the show in this amount of time. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you very much.
So try that. And make sure that you get the book, or the books that are coming out, because it'll explain it in a lot more detail. So I hope that was helpful for you. Debbie, do you have anything to add?
No, that was extremely informative for myself as well. The exercise, even if you maybe even just starting out walking right outside, or if you don't want to get outside, do yoga inside, something like that, to start off as some kind of exercise routine.
Yeah, yoga and walking is really good. I suggest, though, it works better if you're doing some things where it's a little bit intense for at least 10 minutes. So it has to try to make it a little intense for 10 minutes, because that tends to, when I do it or when I watch other people, that tends to be about the mark where you can pull that balance back in. And it has to be consistent. For you right now, it would have to for sure be every other day, no ifs, ands, buts about it until you kind of balance out. There's no cutting corners at that point. It has, and then you can move. Then you can adjust it, to like 2-3 times a week or something. But people don't realize how important that is. They really, I swear, they just think I'm trying to get them in shape. But it's really a necessity. It really is, and you'll feel so much better. You will not believe how much better you will feel if you do that. You won't even believe it. You'll be shocked. You'll think that was too easy. Yeah, I know. You really don't believe me, but it's true. She's like going, I don't think so. But anyways, thank you for calling, and good luck with that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your insight.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, and I kind of want to end on, or I want to ask you about your experience as well, but I do want to end on that. I don't think that I can stress that enough. I have friends that are in the field as well as I am, And every time that we're doing any like channeling work or any stuff like that, I was told that as a young psychic, and I kind of hated exercise, so I was kind of like, yeah. And it wasn't until I sort of was at my wit's end with some of this empath stuff that I thought, how bad can it be? Like it can't be worse. So I'm just going to experiment with some different things. And I'll tell you, the results with the exercise thing was shocking. Did I lose weight or be in more shape? Well, absolutely. Did that happen? Not exactly, but I thought way I'm like, oh, I will just be way more balanced and I will lose 10 pounds at the same time. But that didn't exactly happen. I just got in better shape and sort of stayed the same way. But my energy was so much stronger. I cannot stress that enough for you guys listening. I really cannot. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do because exercise is not fun. And so it's hard to be consistent at that when it's something that you do not enjoy doing. But it's kind of like brushing your teeth. You just have to make it a way of life. It has to become part of your lifestyle because you want to keep your teeth, right? So if you want to be able to manage your day, you're just going to have to make that part of your routine. And so what type of experiences have you had with empathic stuff? You're just discovering that you've discovered, right?
Yeah. I've been that way for probably my entire life, but just realizing over the last couple of years that, I'm not just a super sensitive person. I mean, we're going back to when I was little. I would get in trouble because I was so sensitive, and then I think it struck me that I was the word being empathic when I had my own kids. And when they were little and they would get sick, I would feel what they were feeling, like whatever it was. They had a stomach ache. I had a stomach ache. They, were feeling, they had a headache. I had a headache. And then finally, I swear, it's my husband and the two girls. Everybody was sick except for me. And I was feeling my husband. I was feeling the girls. And then I finally said, I cannot, this is way too much, and I have to put on a different hat and step out of everything and play nurse and not feel anything. And at that moment, I just visualized this shield just went up and, took care of everybody. But that was the turning point for me of realizing that this is something, not just being so close to the family, that I'm feeling everything. And, going from one extreme to the other, as you talked about, let's say going into a crowded store or a mall, I would come home feeling so drained, like I needed a nap. And then on the opposite side of that, this past weekend, we had this amazing TEDx AFC event, and that, 500 people plus came together to be inspired, and with that, you felt that awesome, positive energy, which makes me just fully come alive. And I was just, we talked about, we had our vibration show from 1 to 10. I was at an 11. I was very, very happy, enjoying the whole process. But the things that you talked about today, like for that last caller, there's times where I have felt oversensitive, and the balanced diet, that is so, so huge. I eat very, very healthy, and the exercise, I walk at least 3 times a week, 2 miles.
Right.
And the cleansing, that is huge also. Every evening, get the rest, whatever it is, off. Another thing that I do, of course, I'm very connected with the earth energy. For me, it's being out in nature is extremely grounding for me. Also, the ocean, we're so fortunate to live near the ocean. That is also very cleansing to me, to my soul, to my, my whole being.
Oh, awesome grounding techniques. But with this last caller, and I'm so glad she called, because a lot of empaths get to the point where they were doing the grounding, but then all of a sudden something happened where they just slipped so far into being so in tune with their spiritual empath part of themselves that they didn't even see it happen. Sometimes it becomes like a blind side, or that's the way it's happened to me in the past. You're not really paying attention, and the next thing you know, you've just been really you're so into your spiritual body that you're so out of balance at that point that you have to work to get back to where you were. And so one of the things that I really want empaths to understand is you have to treat yourself differently. You're not like everybody else. No matter how much you want to be, you're not. And so the other thing that I actually didn't address on the show, but even when it comes to healthcare, I've noticed that I have to be treated a little bit differently, and my kids, especially my son, he has to be treated a little bit differently at the doctor. We can't just do all Western medicine. There's some other things that we have to do with like the muscle testing and that sort of thing, because we're not the same as everybody else. Our bodies, our spiritual bodies, operate differently with our physical bodies. And as an empath, that is true. And so where some people who are not empaths, again, I'm so going to stress this exercise, maybe they just need to exercise to lose weight or to stay in shape physically. Empaths have to exercise to stay spiritually balanced. It's not just a physical thing. It's a spiritual balance, and that really helps that. And so you have to learn a different lifestyle. I hate to compare it to this. I don't even want to, because it sounds bad if I do this. It's kind of like if you were diabetic or on the verge of being diabetic, you have to learn a different lifestyle. You just have to eat differently and do different things, right? And empath is not a disease. It's not a horrible thing. It's not anything. It's just you're different because of the psychic senses and because your spiritual body is a little bit different. And so you must maintain yourself differently than all your friends and family around you, or many of your friends and family around you. And that's why it is so important that you do some of the things that we're going to talk about on this next show. And that's why it's also majorly important that you exercise. It's part of balancing yourself. And so you're just different. You have to learn a different way of a lifestyle. It's just the way it's got to be. And if you do that, and you're more aware of when you're out of balance, because really the key to being a fully functional, super wonderful empath is, and a fully healthy one, is to just be aware. That is to get you through every single day of your life, every single year of your life. You can be a fully functional, very healthy empath, but you have to be aware of when you start to slip out of balance. And then when you start to slip out of balance, you have to be aware of protection. You have to be aware of how the energies around you affect you. You have to be aware of when you begin to slip out of balance. And so as you do the protection, as you're aware of how the energies affect you, once you get to the part where you've slipped out, then you take the proper steps to slip back in. That's the whole key to really maintaining a very healthy life of being an empath. But it takes a lot of dedication, and just it feels like work sometimes when you start doing it, but then it just becomes who you are, you know. But be a functioning empath. Be good to your body and your soul, and don't become a victim to it, because I think many people just get so frustrated and so just depressed, or not really depressed, but just frustrated about all these extra things that they have to deal with, and trying to figure out what's their stuff and what's somebody else's stuff, and not wanting to go into Walmart because they're going to experience that stuff. You know, so they get really frustrated. They get down about it. They overeat because when they get nauseous and shaky, that's what your mind correlates to your physical body needing food, when it's actually your spiritual body needing fuel. And that can be done through, meditation or sleep at that point if you've gotten off track to where you're feeling nauseous and shaky. Again, we'll go over some of that stuff in the next show. But the key is really just to be a functioning empath. I mean, there's no other way to be. You cannot rid it. You can't get rid of it at that point. You can lessen it by being in balance, but it just doesn't go away. that make sense?
And do you? I mean, it seems that at everybody has this, has some kind of form of being sensitive to other people's feelings, and
they have a form of being sensitive to their feelings, but it's funny because only other empaths say that. Not everybody is an empath. They just are not. But as an empath, it's weird because you just tend to think everyone has this ability. But
well, you went through your 6 signs, and I grew up thinking, well, doesn't everybody feel this way?
like empaths, I'm not even joking. It's hilarious. But empaths. That's why I say when we go through the 6 signs, you either are going to know, you're going to be like, oh yeah, yep, that's me, and you're going to think the same thing. Like not everybody's that way. I didn't even know there was anything wrong with me. Not that there's anything wrong with you, but no, not everybody has to deal with all of these things. They really, really, truly don't. And I know that because I've been around a lot of my family members are not empaths. A lot of my friends are not empaths. And sometimes I'm like, oh, you're sort of lucky. you can just do what you want to do wherever with anybody, and you're just all good and oblivious. How awesome is that? What is that? Where being oblivious is bliss or something? I can't remember the saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ignorance is bliss. Oh, yeah. Lovely people. So anyways, you can be fully functional, but it has to be a serious awareness, and it has to be seriously managed. It just does. Otherwise, you can have issues with it, and you can have where you're overeating and having the anxiety and not being able to go anywhere and wanting to do things, but feeling trapped and feeling like you can't because the stuff is so overwhelming that it's really, when it gets to that point, you really feel like frozen in not being able to do anything, You feel frozen in your anxiousness and all of those things. And the last thing that I do want to point out about being an empath, however, you had mentioned something that was also really important. As a parent, if you're an empath as a parent, you are not even kidding. Oh, I hate it when my kids get sick or something, and God forbid my son have migraines because it makes me crazy. Like I'm completely just into their illness, and I have to try to cut that off, but it's really hard for me, even as trained as I've become. But now, when I went into the parent thing, I forgot about the other thing I was going to say. But anyways, the stuff is easily managed. You can do it. You just have to be committed to it. So
right.
Yeah, and that book that I have coming out has so much more information on it in it. That Intuition and Psychic Ability, the Spiritual GPS. So if you are not on my VIP mailing list, please make sure that you go get on there. It's on the HawaiiHealings.com. You just put your name in the email thing, or on inspirationalexaminer.com. And if you want to know what the signs are again, my article is also on inspirationalexaminer.com, the 6 signs of being an empath. But if you put your name in the email list, you will get before it comes out or when it comes out, and so you can go ahead and purchase that. And Debbie, you want to tell them how to find you?
You can find me at ilovebloomies.com. We are spreading lots of joy and gratitude over there, and we just broke ground for another community gratitude garden over at the UCSD campus at our TEDx event. It's in the Rogers Community Garden, and we had 500 people collectively write out on their blooming paper what it is they were thankful for. And we planted that all, so the bloomies, the seeded papers, will bloom wildflowers, and we are literally growing gratitude and spreading joy and beautifying the earth all at the same time.
That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Yes, it's really exciting. It's just that brings me so much joy to do that.
We want to make sure that people join your Facebook and Twitter as well, because from that website, right? And you can join mine,
yes.
or But that's where you put a lot of your information out that you're doing with all of that stuff. That's where I put a lot of information out that I'm doing. So make sure that you friend us on Facebook and Twitter, because we do a lot of stuff on the social networking area. So next time, we'll see you next week. So join us again. Have a wonderful week. Aloha.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Hey, it is Ryan Seacrest. There's something so thrilling about playing Chumba Casino. Maybe it's the simple reminder that with a little luck, anything is possible. ChumbaCasino.com has hundreds of social casino-style games to choose from with new game releases each week. Play for free anytime, anywhere, for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Top reasons your career wants you to move to Ohio. So many amazing growth opportunities, high-paying jobs in technology, advanced manufacturing, engineering, life sciences, and more. You'll soar to new heights, just like the Wright brothers, John Glenn, even Neil Armstrong. Their careers all took off in Ohio, and yours can too. A job that can take you further, and a place you can't wait to come home to. Have it all in the heart of it all. Launch your search at callohiohome.com.